The whispers of the Bohemian Grove. Hello, and welcome. Today, you're not just listening to a story, you're stepping into a world of mystery, secrecy, and language discovery. This is more than just entertainment. It's a journey to improve your English listening, reading, and vocabulary, all while experiencing an intriguing suspense story. As you follow along, take note of new words and expressions. After the story, I'll briefly explain some of the key phrases and vocabulary. Now, take a deep breath. The forest is dark. The secrets are deep, and you're about to enter. The Bohemian Grove. The story begins. Jonathan Reyes wasn't afraid of secrets. In fact, he chased them for a living. As an investigative journalist for a mid-sized magazine in San Francisco, most of his work involved corporate fraud and political lies. But this was different. He had received a small, unmarked envelope. No return address. No sender. Only his name, typed neatly on the front. Inside was a single card. Thick, cream-colored paper. Elegant. Simple. It read, Bohemian Grove, the 21st of July. Sunset. Come alone. There was no explanation, but Jonathan knew exactly what it meant. The Grove, the place whispered about in government halls, business meetings, and internet conspiracy threads. A private gathering hidden deep in the redwood forests of Northern California, where the world's most powerful men supposedly came to relax, talk, and plan. For years, rumors had circulated. Strange rituals, political decisions made in secret, even talks of mock sacrifices. It sounded ridiculous until now. Into the trees. He drove for hours, leaving the city lights behind. As the sun dipped low, the GPS showed only empty space. No roads, no names, just forest. Suddenly, two tall men appeared at the edge of the road. Both wore dark suits and stood beside a large iron gate that blended into the trees. Jonathan rolled down his window. One of the men spoke. Name? Jonathan Reyes, he said, trying to sound confident. The man checked a list and nodded. Follow the torches. Don't leave the path. The gates creaked open. As he entered, a feeling washed over him, a mix of awe, fear, and excitement. It was happening. The gathering begins. Torches lined the dirt road. The forest grew darker, older. The trees felt alive, like they were watching him. Eventually, he arrived at a clearing. Dozens of luxury tents stood in a perfect circle. Men in fine clothes drank wine and laughed loudly, their faces half lit by firelight. Classical music floated in the air, carried by the wind through hidden speakers. No phones. No cameras, no outsiders. This was the rule of the Grove. But Jonathan was not here to relax. He had a tiny recorder hidden in his shoe and a camera button sewed into his jacket. He wasn't invited to attend, he was here to expose. That night, as the fires burned and laughter echoed through the trees, he noticed a group breaking away from the main circle. They moved silently toward a darker path, where the forest was thickest. Jonathan waited a moment, then followed. Into the heart of the forest. Jonathan moved carefully, one step at a time. The deeper he went, the quieter the forest became. The music and laughter from the main camp faded into a low, ghostly hum. All he could hear now were the soft crunches of leaves beneath his shoes and the rhythmic beating of his heart. He didn't use a flashlight. Only the moon guided him pale and cold through the high canopy. The men he followed were just shadows now, far ahead but visible enough. They moved with purpose, as if they had done this many times before. Finally, they stopped. Jonathan crouched behind a fallen tree and watched. The ritual clearing. A small stone clearing lay hidden in the forest, surrounded by thick redwoods that stood like silent giants. In the center, a circle of candles flickered in the dark. At the far end stood something massive, a 20-foot stone owl, its eyes black and empty. Jonathan froze. He had heard about this, the cremation of care, they called it, an ancient ritual performed every year at the grove, a way to release worries and enter the retreat with a clean spirit. But some believed it meant more. Some believed decisions that shaped the world were made right here under the gaze of the stone owl. The fire begins. One man stepped forward, dressed in a crimson robe. His voice echoed through the clearing. Tonight, we cast off the burdens of the outside world. We let go of care, and we are free. He raised a torch. The others responded in unison. Free from care. A wooden figure was rolled into the clearing, human-shaped but clearly fake, like a large doll. Jonathan squinted. Was it symbolic? Was it something else? The fire lit fast. Flames roared upward, casting flickering shadows across the forest. The owl seemed to come alive in the firelight, its eyes glowing like coals. One of the robed men turned, and for a moment, Jonathan saw his face clearly. A U.S. Senator. His hands trembled slightly as he spoke. May care be gone. May we decide without fear. Jonathan's recorder was running. His hands were sweating. Then, a sudden noise behind him. A twig snapped, caught in the dark. Jonathan turned, heart racing. A silhouette loomed over him. You shouldn't be here, the voice growled. Before he could run, strong arms grabbed him. The recorder dropped from his hand into the dirt. He was pulled to his feet and dragged toward the ritual circle. The men turned to look at him. A guest? One asked with mock politeness. A spy, another replied coldly. The man in the crimson robe stepped forward. He wasn't angry, he was amused. Let's show our guest what it means to be part of the grove. The others laughed softly, not cruelly but knowingly, as if this had happened before. The strange hospitality. Instead of hurting him, they took him back to the camp, gave him water, even offered him a seat. The atmosphere was oddly calm. We'll let you go in the morning, said the robed man, but not before you understand what we are. He leaned in close. You think we rule the world? We don't. We shape it. Quietly, carefully. Ritual is just memory, tradition, not power. Jonathan didn't know what to believe. But one thing was clear. They were letting him leave, and that meant something. The morning after. At sunrise, Jonathan was escorted to the gates. His camera and recorder were returned, both wiped clean. Some stories are better left untold, one man said softly, his face expressionless. As the gates closed behind him, Jonathan looked back one last time. The grove stood silent, still, and full of shadows. He had entered to find truth. Instead, he left with questions. Back in the city, 3 days later, Jonathan sat at his desk in his apartment, staring at the tiny voice recorder that had been returned to him. He had already checked it 5 times. All his audio files were gone. No signs of tampering, nothing unusual. At least, not to the untrained eye. But that morning, something changed. When he clicked the power button, the recorder's screen flickered, and a single audio file appeared. Unnamed, undated. His pulse quickened. He pressed play. "You are not the first. You will not be the last." The voice was mechanical, almost artificial. Then came another sentence. "If you want to know more, follow the owl." That was it. The file ended. Jonathan sat in silence, staring at the device. Follow the owl. The symbol appears. He flipped the recorder over and noticed, for the first time, a strange engraving on the bottom. Tiny, shallow, but clear. A stylized owl sitting on a key. He had never seen it before. It hadn't been there before the grove. Quickly, he opened his laptop and searched for the image. After hours of digging, he found something deep in an archived forum, the Order of Minerva, an alleged secret society within Bohemian Grove, a group said to act not as hosts, but as watchers-keepers of a deeper truth, older than the club itself. No names, no locations, only symbols and riddles. The hidden file. He plugged the recorder into his computer. At first, nothing. Then, after bypassing some system permissions, a hidden folder appeared. Inside was a text file called Feather One Text. It read, "You passed the first fire. Now the forest follows you. The owl watches from the shadows. If you want to know what you really saw, come to the Library of Forgotten Books. Midnight. Bring no light." There was no address, no city, no country. Just the phrase, "Coordinates will arrive at dusk." Jonathan leaned back in his chair. Whatever this was, it was no longer just a story. It was a game, a test, a door, and he was walking through it. The Midnight Library. At sunset, coordinates appeared on his phone, no message, just a location in the mountains several hours away. By midnight, he was standing in front of a building that looked abandoned. Cracks ran up the stone walls, vines curled over shattered windows. A rusted sign hung crookedly. The Library of Forgotten Books. Inside, the air was thick and dry, filled with the smell of old paper and secrets. Rows of dusty books stretched toward the ceiling. He walked slowly, every step echoing through the silence. Then he saw it. A book lying open on a pedestal, under a beam of moonlight coming through a broken skylight. He stepped closer. The journal. The book wasn't a book, it was a journal, handwritten. It began with a simple title, "To Those Who Follow the Owl." The entries were dated between 1933 and 1947. They described a group within Bohemian Grove, the Order of Minerva, that believed the stone owl wasn't just symbolic, it was protective, a kind of spiritual guardian. But their beliefs turned darker over time. Some entries spoke of rituals to silence outsiders, symbols that appeared in dreams, a network of watchers around the world. One entry chilled him. "The fire does not cleanse, it brands. Those who witness it are marked and watched." Jonathan closed the journal. Suddenly, a faint click echoed through the library. He wasn't alone. The escape? He moved quickly, but quietly. He slipped behind a bookcase, peering between shelves. A figure moved through the shadows, tall, cloaked, and silent. Jonathan clutched the journal tightly and began edging toward the exit. Every step felt like a lifetime. At the door, he turned once. The figure had stopped. It raised a hand and pointed directly at him. No words, just a gesture, as if to say, "We see you." Jonathan ran, back to the surface. By morning, he was back in the city. He placed the journal in a locked drawer. He didn't know what to do yet. His article was already written in his head, but something stopped him. Fear? Curiosity? A strange loyalty to the truth? He opened the final page of the journal again. If you are reading this, then you've been chosen. Don't run. Don't reveal. Learn. The trail widens. Jonathan didn't sleep that night. By morning, the journal's words still echoed in his mind. The fire does not cleanse. It brands. And now, everywhere he went, it felt like he was being followed. Not by obvious agents in black suits, but by glances, by familiar strangers, by people who lingered too long before walking away. At a local coffee shop, someone left a napkin with a symbol drawn in ink. An owl sitting atop a world globe. He looked around, no one made eye contact, but someone had left it for him. The anonymous call. Back at his apartment, the landline rang. He hadn't given that number out in years. He picked up. Reyes, a deep, calm voice, answered. "You're getting closer. Too fast. Slow down or disappear." Jonathan's throat went dry. Who is this? But the line had already gone dead. Seconds later, his power flickered. Then his laptop shut off. It wasn't just a warning, it was a demonstration. They could reach him. Symbols in plain sight. Unable to work from home, Jonathan moved to the university library. There, he found himself staring at a bronze statue, one he had passed 100 times. But this time, he looked closer. At the base, nearly invisible unless viewed from the side, was a tiny engraving. An owl, a key, and 5 stars. He checked his phone. Nothing in the journal mentioned stars, or did it? He flipped through his photo of the final page again. This time, he saw something new. Under the phrase, "Learn," 5 small dots, arranged like a constellation. He checked online. Minerva's crown, a rare star cluster, and also a small museum in Boston. Cross-country flight. 2 days later, he was in Boston, standing outside a red brick museum under a faded sign. The Minerva Institute of Natural History. The museum was nearly empty. Inside, dusty taxidermy animals lined glass cases. Ancient maps covered the walls. A school group was passing through, giggling and uninterested. Jonathan walked toward a quiet exhibit, Wisdom Across Cultures. There, in the center, was a painting, a woman in white robes, an owl on her shoulder, standing beneath a starry sky. He looked closely. Beneath the frame was a tiny switch. He glanced around. No one watching. He pressed it. The hidden room. A soft click. The painting slowly slid aside, revealing a dark tunnel carved into the wall behind the exhibit. A motion sensor light flicked on. The air inside was cold and dry. He stepped through. The corridor led to a circular room filled with filing cabinets, maps, and a large corkboard covered in pins and thread. In the center, a glowing screen. On it, a blinking message, "Welcome, Initiate 43." Beneath that, you passed the fire, the eye, and the key. You may choose now, continue the search, or remain in shadow. Jonathan stared. He typed one word. Continue. The deeper network. The screen revealed a map not of cities, but of connections. Lines stretched across the globe, connecting universities, government buildings, museums, and even private clubs, each marked with a tiny owl. The Order of Minerva wasn't just real, it was global. And somehow, he was part of it now. Files appeared on the screen. Internal memos, decoded messages, even photos from decades ago, all referencing Project CARE. One file stood out. CARE equals Cognitive Authority Reset Experiment, designed to test how knowledge can be hidden in plain sight, and how the public can be made to forget. The Grove's rituals weren't just symbolic. They were psychological operations. What now? Jonathan left the museum just before closing. He had answers but no idea what to do with them. If he published the story, who would believe him? It would look like a mix of folklore, paranoia, and urban myth. If he didn't, then he was keeping one of the greatest secrets in modern history. That night, his phone buzzed again. A new message. No number. You've gone too far to go back. Finish it. Attached. A photo. It was Jonathan, from behind, inside the hidden room at the museum. They had been watching even there. The countdown. Jonathan sat alone in a motel room in Oregon. The last file he had opened wasn't just a name or document, it was a timer. A digital countdown. 2 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. Just below it, Project CARE Full Reset initiated. He didn't know what it meant, but he had 3 days to find out. And one last location to visit, Bohemian Grove. Return to the Grove. On the third night, he slipped back into the forest under moonlight. The air felt thicker than before, like it was charged. He knew the path now. The trees seemed to recognize him. And when he reached the giant stone owl, he wasn't surprised to find someone waiting. A tall man, dressed in a black robe, but his face was exposed. Calm, almost kind. "You've returned," the man said, "as we knew you would." Jonathan didn't respond. He pulled the recorder from his pocket and held it up. "What is Project CARE?" "The truth unveiled." The man motioned to the fire pit beneath the owl. "You believe we control the world," he said, "but we don't. We filter it." He explained, Project CARE was a decades-old operation. The elite realized that knowledge was becoming too accessible, and with it, chaos. People couldn't handle unlimited truth. So the order created rituals, both symbolic and psychological, to implant forgetfulness, to shape memory, not with violence, but with narrative. You saw the fire, you heard the music, but what mattered was what you forgot afterward. Jonathan's mind reeled. So the whole world is forgetting on purpose? Not the whole world, the man smiled. Only those not ready. A choice. The man handed him a tablet. On the screen, 2 buttons. Broadcast, which would upload all files, documents, and names Jonathan had collected to the public. Erase, which would wipe his devices and memory clean, as if none of it ever happened. "You can tell the world," the man said, "and plunge it into paranoia, confusion, and rebellion. Or you can return to your life, write about politics, culture, whatever you like. Jonathan stared at the screen. This was it. Truth or silence, light or shadow. The decision. Jonathan hovered over the screen. His fingers shook. Broadcast? He could be the whistleblower of the century, or the man who sparked chaos. Erase? He could return to peace but live with the question, what if? He thought of the journal, the statue, the painting, the library, and then he closed his eyes. When he opened them, the screen was blank. The man smiled. You made your choice. Or perhaps the choice made you. 1 year later, Jonathan was in South America, writing stories about indigenous languages and forgotten myths. His old articles were gone from the internet. He sometimes dreamed of owls. He sometimes woke up with strange symbols in his notes, but he never returned to the grove. He no longer chased secrets. Now, he listened to stories. One night, at a roadside bar, a woman passed him a folded napkin. On it, an owl, a key, and a star. Jonathan smiled. He wasn't out. He was deeper in than ever.